Welcome, everybody, to the Hounds podcast. This is your home for field trialing and deer dog hunting. It'll be stories and discussions on the world of dog hunting. So let's drop the gate, cast your hounds, and get ready for another episode of the Hounds podcast. The Hounds podcast is proud to partner again with Outdoor Dog Supply for the 2025 year. Outdoor Dog Supply is the leader in online garment sales with their world-class trade-in programs. The guys are not just a business, they're houndsmen and women too. They test their products out in the field, put them to the test, get the latest in garment equipment, and they stay locked and loaded and ready with field trial equipment, collars, leashes, and so much more. Visit their website today at outdoordogsupply.com, and we want to thank Outdoor Dog Supply for their support not only for the podcast, but in field trials across the country. When you're looking for your next purchase in equipment, make sure you keep Outdoor Dog Supply in mind. Now, let's get this episode going, guys. Welcome, everybody, to the Hounds podcast. In this episode, we'll be riding solo again today. We are working on getting a guest lined up. I am trying to get all the details worked out, and right here in the middle of hunting season, holidays, and all kind of good stuff coming up soon. We're trying to wrangle up how we got to get that done. So we're going to be riding solo tonight, but this is going to be a good one, guys. I got a lot of good stuff to kind of talk about. It was opening weekend here in Virginia, but we're going to first start off with our motivational quote of the week, and that's going to be, if you get tired, learn to rest, not to quit. And Banksy is the author behind that one. And then our verse of the week comes from Proverbs 29:11. Fools give full vent to their rage, but the wise bring calm in the end. I liked both of those when I was trying to find us something to get us through the week. So maybe those spoke to you a little bit there. But like I said, guys, it was opening week here in Virginia for deer dog season. So it kind of had me thinking. We were a little busy this week, and the guest I have coming on here pretty soon is going to be a great one, guys. I promise you, you're not going to want to miss that one. But we're getting all our ducks in a row, getting our timing lined up right, and hopefully we'll be able to bring you something by next week, right before Thanksgiving comes in. But opening weekend here in Virginia, a little nervous about heading into this year. I'm sure y'all have heard me talk about it before on here, and I was pretty blessed for a few years to have a pack that I was very proud of. It was a pack that if I casted them, I knew it was a good chance that they were going into the woods and they were going to do what they needed to do. They were running them to the barrel, or at least jumping every time, and it just was a blast to be around. It was a great group to hunt over, and I sure do miss that full group. I still got Vader Dog left, but the missing out on the full group is definitely shown a struggle the past 2 years. This year and last year. But we've got some pups that were in the works last year. I was able to get a little off-season training in and get them running some more, and seemed to be clicking a little bit better. And on the first drive that I was able to cast mine, they ended up getting a kill in front of them. So that was a blessing. I think that's if anybody knows or has had that happen, maybe you got some dogs that are just kind of waiting on, they're just not quite there, and having that kill in front of them and having to where they can get to the deer and get a taste of the deer and really see what they're running and get that success at the end and get that accomplishment, that feeling of accomplishment at the end. That's a game changer for some dogs. That will take a dog that is not fully there and turn it into a dog that is fully there. So hopefully, going here in the next couple of weeks, we turn them loose 2 more times Saturday, and was fortunate enough to get one more kill in front of some of them. So we're hoping to continue that into the next weekend. The club had a great week. We ended up killing 6 on the day, and 5 of them were in front of the dogs, and one of them, one of our honorary members, he's, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in his late 80s, I was getting done with a chase, and I hear him, call him Railroad Man, holler over the radio, Lug Nut, y'all on the radio? And of course, I was on there, and I answered, and he said, man, I done shot a little scrub buck over here. Sure could use some help. And of course, Railroad Man. So I went over there and gave him a hand and loaded it up, and it turned out to be a pretty decent little buck. About, I'd say 16, 17 inches on the inside. So pretty decent, kind of tall rack. Nothing crazy, nothing really mountable, but definitely something to be proud of, especially in the late 80s. He was just kind of chilling and walked up on him, and he took care of the business. So, but one that I wanted to tell the story on, and it's one that will be very, very special to me. Probably for the rest of my life, I'll definitely remember this one. So my razor dog, he was able to. I turned the pack loose, and we jumped pretty quick. They stayed on the ground for a few minutes, and then after a few minutes, they had it up and going, and they got up to a section right up above the road. I don't know what the buck did, but I think he got to the road and flanked the road a little ways, and then popped back across the road. Anyway, it kind of shook the dogs for a couple minutes. It kind of made them think. But old Razor Dog ended up, he was the first one to get back on and get it back right and figure it out, and took it on across the road. Wrapped around, crossed back over the road. Well, this time he didn't get far enough away from Razor, and ran him back down into the bottom, crossed over a creek, and then was going straight to where my dad was. And somebody got on the radio and said, "Big buck coming to you, Nut. Big buck coming to you." And next thing I know, I hear a gun going off, and Dad got on a little radio and hollered back at us that he got it. So I was like, all right, cool. Not only is that special that my dad got to kill one, a nice little buck. I mean, I think it was about 18 inches, maybe, yeah, I'd say about 18 inches. Not super, super thick tines, but a nice buck, could think about mounting. It would have to be the right deal kind of mount. So not only was something that I find very special is when my dog can run it to my dad. It's just something to me that's something I'll never forget. But he was also driving my grandpa's truck, which is his dad, driving his truck. And then it was his brother's, my uncle, that passed away back when I was a teenager. It was his birthday. So it was a lot of interesting and neat kind of stuff that was going on all at the same time, and for that to happen was just really special to me, and it's definitely something I'll never forget. It wasn't a crazy story or nothing like that, Had a couple dogs get in on the chase. They were a little late behind Razor, but they ended up getting to it and getting on the same track kind of deal. But Dad said when he pulled the trigger after he got done shooting and pulled the gun away, old Razor sailed on top of him. It was over. Old boy wasn't too far behind him. So not only you got to be proud of that, but you got to be proud of the whole situation too. And it's like I said, guys, that's just something I'll never forget. The Hounds Tales podcast would like to take a minute and talk about our friends over at Cajun Lights. When pleasure running at night or judging those nighttime field trials, put your trust in Cajun Lights. With the economical Cajun Bayou for the every now and then light user, the Cajun Micro for the nighttime feeds, and the top-level Cajun Blinder for those hardcore crossings. The Cajun Lights are headlamp-style lights that free up your hands for voice recorders or your GPS. They offer flood-style lights in red, amber, and white walking lights. Then the top-of-the-line 4-level main beam light. If you're having a hard time catching crossings at night, give the Cajun Light a try on the red and amber setting to catch the game with the easy flick of a switch and go right back to your main beam light and see your hounds in action. Visit our website today at CajunLights.com and check out And make sure you fill out the survey and select Hounds Tales Podcast to receive 5% off your next purchase from Cajun Lights. Now let's get back to the episode, guys. But so this episode, I wanted to call it "Where Do We Go From Here?" You know, these solo episodes are a little hard to kind of think about a topic and carry a conversation without having somebody to go back and forth with. So I was trying to think of something that we could talk about, especially with deer hunting season being in full swing pretty much everywhere now, you know, especially, well, you know, mainly for the deer dog guys. So I was like, you know, maybe I was trying to wrap my head around it. I said, where do we go from here? It seems to be a topic of discussion that I think is overlooked, underlooked kind of deal. It's something, excuse me, that we all have in the back of our minds of what's next, like what's going to happen. So I want to kick it back first, and I know some of this stuff is going to be a little bit of a repeat. You've probably heard some of this stuff on here before, but it all coincides with each other on this topic. So let's look back at the past and the way it used to be. You know, I was very fortunate enough to what I call growing up in the old days. It was a time where everybody knew everybody. It was a small town deal. It was that's just what we did around here, you know. I remember as a kid that school attendance was so low that, and I may be wrong, that somebody can correct me, but the story that I heard was, I think it was the 14th or 15th every year is what it was to open up deer season, you know, shotgun season, which is when we can run, and here in Virginia, when we can run dogs. You gotta wait till general firearm season to run dogs. So it was like the 14th or 15th, something like that every year. And then it would run all the way till, I think, the first or second Saturday in January, somewhere along them lines. But school attendance was so low on the first day of hunting season, they had to change it to a Saturday to keep school attendance from being so low. You know, I would say not everybody was a, you know, deer dogging that day, but I would say probably 80% of them were deer dogging that day. So I always thought that was just, you can tell how much of a small town and how big this way of life was, is that parents were like, yeah, you're absolutely okay to skip school and go dog hunting for opening day. I did it all the time. I never missed an opening day when I was a kid. But, you know, that kind of goes with that small town feel of, you know, everybody knew everybody. And that's not just talking about hunters. That's talking about the landowners. That's talking about the farmers. That's talking about everybody in the area knew who everybody was. You know, there's a local farmer that used to let us all hunt on his land. And one year he kind of decided, he said, hey, you know, he came to our president of the club at the time and said, look, it ain't nothing against y'all, it ain't nothing that y'all have done wrong. He said, for years and years and years, I knew who was going, if I saw a truck driving on to my, you know, up by the fields and going in to get their dogs or whatever, I knew who it was. I could look at the truck and say, oh, you know, hey, that's Red, or hey, that's Cotton, or hey, that's Nut. You know, I know who those people are, but I don't know these people's trucks anymore. I don't know who these people are, and I'm not comfortable with doing that. So he said, no more hunting, no more going back there. If you need to go get a dog, come knock on the door, but just no entering at y'all's free will. But that just goes to show, you know, back in the day, it was that kind of thing. It was you knew who was what by the kind of vehicle they drove. If you didn't, you probably had seen them in passing and say, hey, I'm pretty sure that's this guy. You know, he's fine back there. So you kind of that's the way it used to be. Is just, and maybe it's just because trucks ain't made the same no more, or maybe everybody gets a wild hair and has to go buy a vehicle, or whatever the case may be. But you just don't see people hunting out of the same stuff every year again. Um, and back then too, I'm sure before I was able to recognize any of this stuff, but I was lucky, like I said at the beginning, I was lucky enough to be able to be a part of some of this era and experience maybe the fading out of this era. But I don't think that neighbors, your neighboring landowners, and there's nothing wrong with that. I want to tread lightly on this one. There's nothing wrong with wanting your own peace on your own property, your own rules, your own boundaries. There's nothing wrong with that. So please don't get it confused that I'm saying that there is something wrong with it. What I'm saying is, back in the day, most of the people didn't care. They didn't care if a dog did slip up on their land. They're like, oh darn, there goes them dog hunting guys again. They're running the dogs. Hope they get that one. That kind of thing. They just realized how much it was. Oh, they're not bothering nobody. They're not going to come on my land and start shooting and going crazy. It was a different world back then. Everybody just was so nonchalant. That was just the way people were. And even if you didn't know the people, you went up, knocked on the door, and they're like, yeah, we'll jump in the truck, And some people are still like that. I'm not saying everybody isn't. But it was without a doubt. Back in the day, you could roll up to a guy's house and say, hey man, my dogs accidentally got back here. I can hear them. They're doing something right here. Do you mind if I go grab them real quick and catch them? And most of the time they're going to say, yeah. Yeah. Or either just hey man, let's go take my truck down there. Does that work? It was such a laid back kind of deal. Excuse me, guys. Sorry. Long day. That this sport was able to succeed and thrive back then because people just, hey, these guys ain't hurting nothing. They knew what was up. I remember back in the day too, I want to say the houndsman of the past. It was, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's a time thing. I don't know if it's something along the lines of we've gotten lazy, I guess is the way to put it, or we're not dedicating as hard to it. I don't know the correct terminology to use in this situation because it's a very sensitive topic. But I just remember growing up, and it wasn't nothing for a couple members to get together and say, hey man, let's go turn loose over here and we're going to try to run some, during the summer. We're going to go try to, put a fox or a coyote in the bind. Let's go see what we can do. Hey guys, y'all want to, do this? Hey, what's going on? It was a lot of communication and team building without even knowing it. They're just out there having fun. They were just out there doing it, getting together, learning each other, learning each other's dogs, learning how the game was going to be moving at different times of the day. And the success ratio with no kind of tracking equipment was just through the roof. People knew their dogs and was able to really take everything you could and put to them as far as, hey, we know what these dogs are. he went in the season with confidence of, yeah, I'll drop the tailgate. Absolutely, I'll drop the tailgate. I know exactly what these things are going to do. And I'm sure, and please, 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 as I'm saying all this, please understand that I'm not talking about this through the entirety of the country that's deer dog hunting. I just hear, I want to speak on things that I hear, on things that seem to be a common ground amongst a lot of clubs. You know, excuse me. And the Hounds of the past, man, it was, and I'm guilty of this. I'm very, very guilty of this, and I know I am. Excuse me. It's all about the dogs, don't get me wrong, but you cannot forget the camaraderie behind it. You cannot forget man, I remember waking up at 4:30 in the morning. I know I've talked about this. I remember waking up at 4:30 in the morning just so we could go load everything up, put them in the box, and then head to the cabin for breakfast. That was the time when everybody was over there. I mean, it was 5:30 in the morning, and the parking lot was full of trucks. Everybody was in there. The fire was going. It was a great time. Everybody's laughing, hanging out, talking about deer that they've seen, and but also eager to get out and do what they want to do, to do what they love. It was a different kind of people then. All right, y'all, we're going to take a quick second and pause this episode, talk about our partners over at Elite Nutrition. Our Hounds guys, they're athletes. They give us their all each and every time they're cast. Elite Nutrition offers all natural products to give your dogs the natural benefits that they deserve. From the Canine Remove and all natural wormer to the ElectroBoost paste for electrolyte replenishment, body fluid balance, and blood flow improvement. They also have products like Active Dog Powder for recovery and joint and muscle support, Essential Dog Powder for daily vitamins and minerals, probiotics, prebiotics, and enzymes, the Canine Lactate Powder for nursing dogs to help with milk supply. There are tons of other products to check out at CajunLights.com, and then click on the Elite Nutrition section to explore. When you get to checkout, and only at CajunLights.com, use the code HTElite10 to receive 10% off your Elite Nutrition products. Again, that's HT Hounds Tails Elite 10. So HT10 Elite 10 in the discount code section to receive 10% off of all your Elite Nutrition products only via CajunLights.com. I've been using their products, guys, for several months now. Cannot be happy with the results. That's pretty much all I run my dogs off of. So thank you, Elite Nutrition, for joining up with the Hounds Tales podcast and taking a step forward into this field trial world. Now let's get back to the results. And then, when it come to club activities, it was all hands on deck. If it was a fundraiser event, it was, if there was 60 people in the club, 35, 40 of them showed up. If it was if it was a road cleanup day, if it was a cleanup day for all the hunting land, 15, 20, 30 people would show up. It was everybody gathered around and worked together so well to make this all work like it was supposed to. And from what I hear, now this is the biggest common thing that I hear from most clubs is, oh, we have cleanup days, but the same 5 people show up every year for cleanup days. It's kind of like raising pups. I feel like a lot of the new guys, what is going to happen when the older hunters can't do it anymore? What are you going to do? It's kind of like raising puppies. If you get you a good dog, maybe 2 good dogs, and you're like, well, this is all I need, then 2 years down the road when you're like, oh crap, this dog's 4 or 5 years old, what am I going to do? Because I have no idea. It's kind of the same in this situation as well. If we don't start accepting his role and the younger generation taking over, hey, you're going to see what happens. But I just remember, man, cleanup days. You get up there at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, whatever the case may be, and you'd have all the roads done by 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at the very latest, and that was all the roads, including hardtop roads that we did the adopt a highway deal. It was a bunch of you out there, and then that turned into a hangout session. Everybody hang around and shot the breeze and told a bunch of lies and told a bunch of stories, and it was fun. Even though it was work, we made it fun. And then something else, that goes along with the whole past and the way it used to be was and I don't know how everybody else's club is. This is just what I've noticed locally. And that's not just our club, it's other clubs, is that, when I was a kid, man, I just remember being out there before the sun was up and dark is a time. When are you going to finish? Dark. Dark is a time. That's when you're going to finish, is dark. Now it's an hour of daylight left. You're like, you hear so many people, I don't know. I don't know if I want to cast again. I don't know if I want to fight them. If they get acting a little crazy. And I don't know. I always loved that every day you went out, these guys were ready to hunt, and they're ready to hunt hard. And they made sure it happened. They hunted from the time they got out there. It did not finish until they caught the last dog at 7, 8 o'clock at night, whatever the case may be. But which to me, that was kind of, looking back at it, it's almost kind of strange. It's like, man, we didn't have GPS collars, we didn't have beep beep collars, we didn't have nothing. We just listened to the dogs. We didn't have no GPS, no, what's your average speed? Oh, this is where we casted. Hey, man, I'm looking at this. This is where my dog is. It was, you listened to the dogs. You told where they were going by the sound of their barks and how their sounds are traveling. And the dogs that you didn't catch at the kill, which was little to none back in those days, because they were such good dogs, such good deer dogs. What if you didn't catch? Was usually sitting at the front porch the next morning, ready for a quick bowl and ready to go do it again. People still have those dogs. Those dogs are still out there, but they're just not as prominent as they used to be. It used to be everybody had dogs. Everybody, when they got off of work Friday night, they went to the dog lots and they either loaded them up or they cast them right out the chute. Didn't matter. Whatever way it was, they did it. So, I don't know. I just remember how good the dogs were. And just the way you used to be able to hunt. It was just such a great time for deer hunting. It was such a great time to be out there in those woods and experience that time. I tell my kennel partner all the time, like, man, you didn't come around before hunting got weird, before hunting got hard. Man, just how much somebody could enjoy those times back there, how relaxed it was, how much fun it was. It was just a good day every time you went out there. So, kind of moving into the next section, we talked about the hunters of yesterday. Now let's talk about the hunters of today. I'm going to do some comparisons. So, like I said earlier in that one story, a lot of these new landowners may not know who the new hunters are or their trucks. So, and don't get me wrong, I mean, this is not something that's easy to do. It's a lot of lining up. It's two people's lives to stop on a day and, going and introducing yourself. But maybe you should take the time and say, hey, I know this lady right here, as nice as she could be, but she also has a little mindset about hound hunting. Maybe you go introduce it. Hey, I just want to introduce myself. I hunt with the X Club. Just wanted to make my acquaintance kind of deal. And this is my truck. This is what I drive. This is who I am. Do I need a written permission, or am I okay to hunt since I'm hunting with the club? That kind of deal. But then when you go to buy, then you go change the truck next year and you got to do all over it again. No, I'm just playing, guys. It is hard, though, on landowners that maybe have an acceptance about hound hunting, but also have a reluctance about it as well. Swapping trucks all the time, and I'm not saying people, don't ever swap trucks. I'm not being like that. I'm just saying, that it is a little extra harder on these landowners, with all these new people voted in, with more and more people trying to get into the sport, which is great. I think the sport needs it. I think the sport needs more and more hunters out there, and good, ethical, smart hunters. And one of the things us new hunters are dealing with is people moving in to houses every freaking where. Everywhere houses are being put up. I don't care where it is. I don't care what the situation is. Houses are getting put up, and they're getting put up fast. We lost one of our best crossings this year because somebody, the previous owner, sold the land, sectioned it off into 4 1/2-acre lots, and put houses on them, and they sold instantly. And we are, from that spot, you're almost 15 minutes from town. And that's just a little town. You go to talking about a city with a mall and, arcades and stuff, you're looking somewhere in that 30-minute range. So it's not like it's, oh man, it's not like it's a super high, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not like a super sought after kind of deal. It's not like it's a lot going on to have fun with. It's, the land's probably just cheap enough, and people are buying like crazy now, especially with these, what do you call them? Shotgun houses. The Hounds Tales podcast is proud to announce our newest partnership with Dog Tight. Y'all watching on video, check out the hat. Be sure to check out dogtight.com, and if when you are there, use our discount code HoundsTales15. That's HoundsTales, TALES, and the number 15 to get a 15% discount on any of your apparel that you get from dogtight.com. I'm sure y'all recognize the name, the Dog Tight song. Carson Robertson and Dog Tight clothing line has jumped on board with the podcast, and we are very, very excited to see where this takes us. So be sure, if you're looking for Dog Tight apparel, hats, hoodies, shirts, check them out, dogtight.com, and use our discount code HoundsTales15 at checkout to get 15%. All right, guys, let's get back to the episode. So I guess where I'm trying to get at here with this is, with the new day hunting and present day hunters is, the land is not growing. The land is shrinking. Houses are popping up everywhere. There's new people. There's new neighbors. There's new guidelines. There's new everything. there's so much to keep up with of, okay, yeah, we used to be able to hunt there all the time, but now we can't. Or, yeah, this guy got bought out by this, and now we can't go in there. Or, hey, this person passed away, and his daughter owns it now, and she doesn't want anybody in there. That's happening all the time. That's happening all the time, and that's not necessarily, something that we can control, but it is something that's happening. It needs to be noted. It's continuing with the present day hunter idea. We're a different breed now. We're a different time. We're a different way of life. Is how I would put it. It's life is so busy now. I mean, we're working jobs that are 7 to 5s, and don't get me wrong, I know this older generation did it, and I'm still trying to figure out, and I think this whole generation is, on how the heck they did it. I feel like they worked, and then they came home and worked and got stuff done, and then I remember all the time still having plenty of time for them to sit down at 8 o'clock and watch whatever show was running that night, and everybody hang out and chill out. But you got like everything done. I mean, it just, I don't know how we did it. And maybe, maybe I'm just crazy. But this generation, this time of living is so hard to manage time to do things for extracurricular. There we go. Euler activities. Excuse me. Had a little brain fart there. But you got a lot of time that I don't know where it goes. And I think that's what makes it so hard to do a lot of the stuff like you used to be able to do. Life's busy. Do we have time to go out and turn loose, once a week, twice a week on the outside? Probably not. Do we have time for a lot of different things? Helping out at these club events. And I'm terrible, but I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect at all. I'm going 2 years without going to one of our turkey shoots. They're not a crazy money maker, but I feel like I should be going, and I just haven't been able to make it work the past 2 years. So, it's just, us houndsmen now are just so busy. So busy, You got to work these crazy jobs and these crazy hours to even get by. That doesn't include paying for this hobby, which is a whole nother subject. But I think as a houndsman today, you have to just accept, say, hey, once every couple weeks, once every week in the off season, I'm going to take it and I'll bite the bullet, and I'm going to lose a Saturday where I could be getting a lot of stuff done. Or maybe I'm upsetting the wife because I want to go do this on a Saturday. Go turn loose. Go turn loose. Maybe that's what we need to start doing more. And one thing I've noticed too, what is it with this generation and younger being more and more and more and more driven to staying up till 1 o'clock in the morning, but don't want to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning? What happened to the good old days of, man, you were in bed by 9:30, 10 o'clock at the latest, and you still got up the next morning excited and ready to go? Where is that? You got over there early to eat breakfast with everybody and chill out and hang out, even if it was just Everybody's sitting around in a cigarette smoke-filled cabin, whatever. Everybody had fun. Everybody had good times. But I don't see as many of this generation and younger generation being excited to wake up. It's so crazy to me. Like, it just, I don't know. I don't know what happened with that. Like, that was just part of the plan. That was just part of the day. That's how it started. And you just don't see the next generation trying to take that over. And then, of course, the biggest thing, honestly, and don't get me wrong, I think I touched on this for a few minutes there just a second ago, but these club events, man, a lot of these bigger ones, your big money maker ones, you don't need 5, 6, 7 people taking the reins on that. You need 50% of your club to show up and help out. Tag team, swap out, whatever it takes to make it work. But you really need those. You need everybody to come to these things. You need, when it comes to cleanup days, we had a cleanup day spring of the year. And a lot of people showed up to help out for this one. We were done with everything in an hour and a half, which normally it was taking us 3 to 4 hours to do everything. But because everybody showed up, it was done in an hour and a half. Everybody got to go home and do whatever they needed to do, or you could hang around and shoot the breeze for a couple hours, Started at 8 o'clock, and by 9:30, 10 o'clock, we were pretty much done. I don't understand why this generation doesn't see that. But, like, I hear it so much that, the younger generation's got to help. Younger generation's got to help. Blah, 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 blah. They're right. We got to figure out what we have to do for this generation and younger to get out to those things, to get out and help out as much as possible. The Hounds podcast is happy to announce our newest partnership with Low 10 Outfitters. If your kennel is looking for new apparel to rock to the next field trial or the upcoming hunting season, look no further than Low 10 Outfitters. They offer shirts, hats, hoodies, coats, and other accessories with custom logos for your kennel or your hound's name to go on. With top quality merchandise and long-lasting quality, you can't go wrong with Low 10 Outfitters. Now we are offering Hounds podcast apparel on their website at low10outfitters.com. Be on the lookout, guys. It's there. Go purchase it. We're live, guys. Go in, go purchase it. low10outfitters.com. Click on the Houndstails section for your Houndstails apparel and the Houndstails Pin Series apparel. So thank you so much for Low 10 Outfitters for teaming up with the Houndstails podcast. Now, let's get you back to the rest of your episode. Talking about all that, I guess the biggest question is, where the heck do we go from here? Are we trying to keep a tradition alive that is an old soul driven in a world that doesn't have an old soul anymore? I don't know. Are we barking up a tree that is slick? What are we doing here? What do we as houndsmen have to do to figure out how to keep this tradition alive? Like, I don't know the answer yet. I'm still searching for the answers. It's just, it's such an old school thing in a world that the old school stuff is slowly but surely fading out. And there's a lot of reasons behind it, and especially dog hunting. There's a lot of difficult things that are happening that make doing this old tradition harder and harder and harder and harder. Or am I wrong? Is it just an odd time? Does every generation go through this? Does every generation have this time of, man, if this next generation don't step up, then we're going to lose it forever, I wonder if, the generation, like my grandpa's generation, I wonder if they had the same worry when my dad's generation came up. I wonder if my dad's generation has the same worry about my generation. is it just an odd time that there's some growing pains for a couple of years, or 5, 6, 7 years, whatever the case may be? Is it just an odd time that we have to push through? We have to take our strides through? Is that what this is? The busyness of this world makes it hard on us to be able to dedicate to hound hunting. I felt like back in the day, maybe these guys just, there wasn't but so much going on other than farming and their job and their wives. When it seems like nowadays there's so much happening, so much going on, and you almost have to do it to even survive. You almost have to do it to make sure that you are succeeding in life. And it takes a lot from hound hunting. It takes a lot from making the most out of the dogs. It does. There's a lot of times where I'd love to just say, hey, every evening I'm going to the dog lots. I'm going to sit around with them for an hour and a half. We're going to have conversations. Now, we're going to practice benching. We're going to check on everybody through and through, thoroughly, flip them upside down, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of times that I'm like, man, I would love to be able to go do this, but I have to go get this, and this done. And it just isn't possible. So what do we do to keep it alive? This is something we talk about, and it's one of those open-ended questions that it's like, you want a response. You're looking for a response. You're looking for ideas. And I think everybody is. I think everybody's looking for that blanket statement, that blanket idea of saying, hey, this is right here is what's going to save deer dog hunting in Virginia. What's going to save it in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, all these states that still allow it. What do we have to do? Here's a few simple ideas that are pretty much free. First one is slow down. Not only slow down for yourself, slow down for the club, slow down for not stressing yourself out so much that you just fall into these traps of TV. Slow down and take your time making decisions. Think before you act. Think before you decide to say, hey, this is what I'm going to say, or hey, this is what I'm going to do, or hey, I want to pop off because I'm freaking mad. Slow down. Think before we act. What I always do if I am put in a weird situation where I got to make a decision and make a decision fast, first thing I think about is keep the thought of passing down to the next generation in the back of your head. Keep it at the point of saying, hey, if I do this, what will the backlash be? And how will this affect how my kids are able to hunt? Keep that thought in process again. And here's the biggest one for me, guys. We need to find the passion and the love for not only the hounds, but for the sport as well. We need to sorry, I got distracted. My cat's down here. I didn't know he was down here. There are guys out there, and probably a lot of guys that are listening to this are like, well, I got the passion for it. Yeah, I agree. You probably do. If you're sitting here listening to me ramble on for an hour, you probably have the passion for the sport. If you wanted to hear deer dogs, you wanted to hear dogs, you probably got a passion. But for the other 60% of the club, 50%, whatever the case may be, maybe they're just out there for fun, which is nothing wrong with that. There's nothing at all being out there for fun, but at some point we have to realize that this is a lot more than just going out there and having fun. It is tens of thousands of dollars in dues every year. It's countless hours of working, not only for the club, but messing with your dogs. It's practically killing budgets to have a decent size pen in your yard, to go out there and do it. When hunting season rolls around, you're spending an extra tank or two of gas in your truck, from depending on how much you're running and how hard you're hunting. finding that passion makes it all worth it. It makes it all say, hey, just because but nothing else matters. That would be the better way to word that. Nothing else matters. Everything is reliant on the dogs, reliant on the sport, relying on the passion of the kill, the having fun out there with everybody, being that competitiveness, not the competitiveness, that's not the right word, being that passion driven, that you want to make your dogs better and better and better. You know, I think that's going to be a big thing, and just keeping those thoughts of, hey, you know, I want to be able to have my son or my buddy's son or this little girl that's in the club now and, you know, carrying around her first BB gun. You know, we need to keep those kind of kids in your thoughts as you're doing it, and making sure we're able to pass this down and keep doing this beautiful tradition that we love, guys. So I'm not going to ramble on anymore, guys. I definitely appreciate y'all listening. Hopefully I didn't get a little too crazy in my thought processes here. I'm extremely tired tonight for some reason, and it is about 10 o'clock at night, and I am crashing. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up, guys. I definitely appreciate all y'all listening so much. If there's any suggestions, feel free to hit me up. Hope everybody had a great opening day here in Virginia. Good luck for the rest of the season. Everybody else out there that is already enjoying the season, good luck to y'all for the rest of y'all's season as well. So, all right, guys, I definitely do appreciate it. Be sure to check out the links on the Facebook page for all of your discount codes, and pay attention to the ads. All right, guys, thank y'all so much for listening. And like always, guys, happy hunting.